The sun shone brightly over the perfectly trimmed lawns of Westwood Academy, where families gathered in their finest clothes to celebrate one of life's greatest milestones. Laughter floated through the air, cameras clicked endlessly, and proud parents embraced their children who stood tall in caps and gowns. It was a day overflowing with joy, the kind of day that sparkled with hope and accomplishment. Yet beneath the golden glow of celebration, one figure sat apart from the crowd. Her black graduation robe folded over the wheels of her chair, blending into the shadows of the corner. She was the daughter of one of the city's most powerful CEOs, but titles and wealth meant nothing here. In that moment, she was not the heiress to an empire. She was simply a young woman who felt invisible, isolated, and heartbreakingly alone. Her diploma rested tightly in her hands, the golden seal gleaming proudly under the sunlight, yet her eyes refused to rise to meet the world around her. She had crossed the stage, accepted the applause, and earned her triumph, but instead of feeling victorious, her heart ached with emptiness. Friends clustered together with their families, classmates posed for group pictures, and hugs seemed endless in every direction. The air was filled with laughter, yet none of it reached her. No one came to sit beside her. She had endured battles that no young woman should ever have to face, an accident that had taken her ability to walk, whispers and pity that followed her through school, and worst of all, the painful absence of a father too busy with boardrooms and contracts to notice the silent tears of his only child. Graduation was meant to mark the day her suffering transformed into triumph, but instead, she found herself sitting in the middle of celebration, tasting the bitter truth that triumph meant little when it was celebrated alone. As the cheers around her grew louder, her heart seemed to sink further into silence. She lowered her gaze to the diploma in her lap, its polished seal mocking her with a weight heavier than any true victory should bear. Her father had promised he would come, had sworn he would be there to share her moment of glory, but once again, he had chosen the empire over her fragile heart. She wanted someone, anyone, to see her. Not the chair that carried her, not the scars of her accident, not the label of being the CEO's daughter. She wanted to be seen simply as herself, a young woman who had survived, who had endured, and who had fought for her place on that field, whether standing or sitting. The loneliness cut deeply, but fate, in its strange and often poetic way, was about to step in. Across the neat rows of white folding chairs and the happy clusters of families, a man stood holding the hand of a little girl. His appearance was simple, almost humble, crisp shirt, dark trousers, nothing flashy to announce who he was. He wasn't watching the graduates with everyone else. His eyes had found her, the solitary young woman in the wheelchair, the one who seemed to shrink smaller and smaller beneath the weight of her own silence. At his side, his daughter tugged gently at his hand. In her other hand, she held a piece of paper covered in crayon colors, a child's drawing of a rainbow. The innocence of children sees what the world often overlooks, and the little girl had noticed her. She whispered to her father, asking why no one was sitting with the graduate, why she looked so sad on a day that was supposed to be so full of happiness. The single father hesitated. He had not come to this graduation with any intention of making a difference. He was there only to support his niece, another graduate among the many. But something about the young woman caught him and refused to let him look away. There was strength in her posture, even as she tried to make herself invisible. There was courage in her eyes, even as they turned downward. Perhaps what drew him most was the loneliness she carried, for he too knew what that weight felt like. Life had not been kind to him either. He had lost his wife years ago, left to raise his little girl alone, and loneliness had become his own silent companion. In seeing her, it was as though he recognized his own reflection, the quiet endurance, the unspoken ache, the desire for someone to simply understand. And so, with his daughter's small hands still curled around his, he began to walk forward. Step by step, through the laughter and chatter, he crossed the distance between them. At his side, the little girl's crayon-colored rainbow fluttered slightly in the breeze, as though it, too, wanted to bring a touch of hope. Together, father and daughter made their way toward the young woman in the wheelchair, the CEO's daughter who longed, more than anything, to be seen. She didn't notice them at first. Her eyes were still lowered, fixed on the diploma resting on her lap, her mind replaying the echoes of disappointment that had haunted her all day. But then she heard the soft sound of footsteps stopping beside her. She hesitated before lifting her gaze, and when she did, she was startled to see a little girl standing there. The child's face was lit with a bright, innocent smile, and in her small hands she held out a colorful drawing of a rainbow. Behind the little girl stood her father, his expression steady and calm, his gentle nod carrying no trace of pity, only understanding. The moment stretched in silence, and yet that silence spoke louder than all the applause and cheering around them. For the first time that day, she felt seen. Truly seen. The little girl stepped closer and carefully placed the drawing in her lap. In a sweet, almost whispering voice, she explained that the rainbow was for her, because rainbows always come after the storm. The graduate's throat tightened, her eyes stinging with tears she had refused to let fall all day. Her heart, so heavy with loneliness moments before, felt as if a crack of light had broken through the darkness. The man knelt slightly, lowering himself to meet her eyes. He didn't speak, not with words, but his presence told her everything she needed to know. She wasn't invisible anymore. He didn't see her as the CEO's daughter. He didn't see the chair or the accident. He simply saw her. A person. Someone who mattered. What happened next wasn't grand or dramatic, yet it meant more than any speech or ceremony. The man and his daughter sat down beside her, filling the empty space that had seemed so unbearable just moments ago. They spoke softly, exchanged small smiles, and in the warmth of that simple connection, the sharp edges of her loneliness began to soften. She was no longer watching the celebration from the outside, she was a part of it. Not because of her father's presence, or the applause, or the prestige of her last name, but because two strangers had chosen to share a moment of kindness with her. As the final graduates were called and the crowd erupted in cheers once more, she found herself smiling, this time not the polished, practiced smile she had worn countless times for cameras and polite conversations, but a genuine smile. One born from the realization that kindness, in its purest form, often comes from the most unexpected places. In that moment, she understood something she had long struggled to accept. She didn't need her father's approval to feel proud of herself. She didn't need the world's validation to feel worthy. Her worth had been there all along, written in the battles she had fought, in the resilience that carried her through, and now, in the reminder that even the smallest acts of compassion could heal the deepest wounds. Her father might have missed her graduation, but she had gained something far more valuable than his fleeting presence. She had gained a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood, but by love, by kindness, and by the choice to simply be there. The single father and his little girl became more than just strangers passing through her day. They became a symbol of hope, a quiet promise that even in a world quick to overlook the broken, there are still hearts willing to stop, to notice, and to care. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with golden light and long shadows across the graduation field, she clutched the rainbow drawing close to her chest. Her diploma rested on her lap, no longer heavy with disappointment, but lightened by a newfound strength. She had walked, or wheeled, this path believing she was alone. But as she prepared to leave that field, she carried with her the truth that she was never truly alone at all.